Good morning. I'm Ken Hold it. Let's start over. Good morning. I'm Ken Fadner, Chairman of MediaPost. Welcome to Omma DDM, Data-Driven Marketing. It's a new show in our series of shows for the digital advertising, media, and marketing industry. And we thank you for coming out early to get started with us. We've got a great program ahead for you. I want to recognize right away our sponsors, Exponential, our title sponsor, and Media Math. You'll be hearing from both of them over the lunch hour. I hope you'll stay and give them your attention. I'm sure it will be well worthwhile. MediaPost is deeply committed to covering all facets of real-time marketing and data-driven advertising. We have, as you probably, I can't see anybody out there because of these lights. I was going to ask for a show of hands, but I wouldn't see anyhow, so I'm going to pretend that all of you raise your hands when I ask this question. We've recently started in January a little daily publication called Real-Time RTM Daily. How many of you are getting that publication? Wow, the whole room. If you're not, you should check it out because it's all about, every day, all about everything having to do with how the world of advertising, media, and marketing has moved toward a world of real-time data, real-time creative even, real-time flash media events. And marketers are beginning to find all the resources they need to deploy their activities towards reacting to the marketplace in real time. So we're covering it every day. Our editor-in-chief, Joe Mandisi, it's his brainchild. He's the one who has, mainly driven MediaPost to call its attention to this developing area. Of course, we've been covering aspects of data and targeting and behavioral advertising for many years. We had a long-running series called Omma Behavioral, which, I don't know, I think it started like 6 years ago. And, we found over time it grew like, I don't know, like a very robust young baby. And grew to be oversized, and we found that it was really like a code word, in a way, behavioral, for all things having to do with scientific marketing in the digital world. And but over time, of course, the world outgrew that narrow term. And so we've attempted to keep up with it and perhaps even lead it a little bit. In that series, this is all a commercial for MediaPost, by the way. And then I'm going to introduce our programmer and MC for the day. In the nature of being committed to that field, we've launched something this year called the RTB Roadshow. We did an Omma RTB in New York in January. We were in San Francisco in March. We're going to be in London in June 11th, if you happen to be over there. We're in LA end of July, or third week of July. I'm not sure exactly what those dates are. And so we're covering real-time buying in a deep and focused, concentrated way in a number of shows across the country. So and then we go on, by the way, to Chicago and Seattle in November. And I suppose we'll be back in New York next January if you're really planning ahead. Of course, in the world of real-time, you really don't need to plan that far ahead because everything could change. But our schedule's not going to change. So. Enough about that. But there is one other show I want to call your attention to. It's our Brand Marketer Summit. It's taking place third week of June in Kohler, Wisconsin, where they play a lot of golf. I'm from Wisconsin, and I heard about Kohler my whole life. And people talked about the great golf at Kohler, Wisconsin. I had never been there till last June, and it is a very beautiful golfing mecca. And it's a fun little sleepy Wisconsin town, too. So you might think about coming out there because its theme this year is real-time marketing, and it's aimed entirely at the brand marketer to try to help them get on top of this rapidly changing phenomenon. It's real-time marketing, time and data wait for no brand. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over now to Steve Smith. Steve Smith, who I've introduced a lot of times, he does a lot of everything for MediaPost, and we're delighted for his help and support. He's been the programmer of, I think, all of our, along with Joe Mandisi, our editor-in-chief, they've programmed all our data and real-time shows. They have a great expertise in the field. No one knows more. If you want to know about what's going on in the field, you should know these guys, Steve Smith and Joe Mandisi. So Steve, I know you're out there somewhere. Come on up and take us through the day. I guess he's back here.
Good morning, everyone. Wow, those lights are bright. And I know you're out there, because I can hear you breathing. Today is going to be about how much fun data is, and in fact it is. I've been covering it now since we started the behavioral shows back in 2007, and every week in the Data and Targeting Insider that I write. It is fascinating. It's fascinating to find the affinities that companies find, and I think one of the things that we'll find today is how creative data has become. And of course it's not new. It's also one of the things that you'll be hearing today is that there's nothing entirely new about data-driven marketing. The age of data-driven marketing has been going on for as long as people have been crunching numbers. Magazines have always had lists. Direct response has always had mail. Even infomercials have been crunching the conversion numbers to optimize campaigns and even test new markets. Most of the basics have always been there. Data didn't just get big, however, in the last couple of years. It got different, and that's what's made it especially interesting. Much of the torrent of new, bigger data that we talk about over the last few years, a lot of it is coming from that spigot we call social data. And it's data of a different kind. It's data of a more intimate kind, but it's also much more unstructured. It takes more finesse, more interpretation. It needs to be integrated in new ways. So what we've got here now that is different from the data we've always seen before is this huge morass of incompatible inputs, offline, online, structured, unstructured, first party, third party, that itself has created a whole new Luma chart of providers, some of whom we'll be talking about and hearing from today. It's a whole new supply chain that many of you have to navigate and understand. That's one of the reasons that we do these shows. And many people don't appreciate how, how several years ago when we started talking about how big data, exactly how disruptive this was going to be in so many fundamental ways. When we did our first show in this series back in January, it was one of the things that we've heard, and in my coverage of the field over the last few years, it's sort of the constant refrain that I get from executives is just how hard this is to implement within organizations. Data, after all, allows for a lot of real-time response. It's one of its key elements, is the ability to respond in real time to changing circumstances, even trends. But that also means that brands lose some degree of control over the message, or at least they're often moving that responsibility out to third parties. We've seen some of the detrimental effects of that over the last couple of months. Data does not live nicely in traditional corporate silos. Data is about finding interconnections, very often forcing people to rethink whether the structures they've been living under, sometimes for decades within corporations, really make sense, given the ways in which the data suggests a greater interconnectedness among departments is required. And in order for data to be fully integrated, and this is the thing I hear a lot of when I talk to executives about how data is being incorporated into their marketing, it requires new skill sets. You need people whose eyes don't glaze over at the sight of a spreadsheet, who don't simply overlook that email that has the latest flowchart in it or has the latest graph in it. You really need people who know throughout the organization what data means, what it can do, why it's relevant to their jobs. And most of all, it means, I think a lot of companies are finding how it's blurring the lines between what a CMO does, what a CIO does, and what a CTO does. In many ways, in the higher echelons of most corporations, that sort of is the emblem of what's really needs to go on throughout the organization. We're going to engage all of those issues today, I think. Most of the agenda touches on pieces realities of that. And we've tried to advance the conversation a bit from our first show just 5 or 6 months ago. But I also want to plant another little bug about data-driven marketing and another aspect of data that's come up recently. I've written about it recently and is a special interest to me, and that is sort of a word about the consumer and the consumer's relationship to data. And it's not necessarily the usual way that we talk about consumers relating to data in terms of privacy and protection and security. But also one of the things that I've been seeing, and some of the stats I've been seeing, is a growing dissatisfaction among a lot of consumers about the ways in which companies are gathering data but not using it very effectively and making their lives easier. For instance, I just covered a new survey that had to do with the growing dissatisfaction that people have with and frustration that people have with customer service and with a lot of e-commerce sites that ask for data, the same data input again and again and again, leading to tremendous frustration and often people abandoning carts or hanging up the phone. What consumers are starting to see is there's certain consumer savviness that's going on, a new consumer relationship to data itself. The corporation and marketers aren't the only ones who are part of the data revolution. People are too. They're, after all, the ones who are inputting this data. They have a certain savviness about how this data could be used to make their lives easier. And they're starting to get more frustrated over the fact that companies aren't necessarily making good use of it. And they're starting to resent it. It's an interesting phenomenon. So when we talk about data-driven marketing, one of the things we also have to talk about is how companies need to satisfy consumers' rising expectations about what the company should be doing with the data to make their lives easier. As well, productizing data. We've already seen just in the last couple of years the ways in which data is not just something that lives within corporations and within enterprises, but it's actually being used now to create, to be put into the hands and the control of consumers in great new products. I mean, some of the best ones, for instance, are the ways in which spending trackers are helping people get greater control over their own budgets. But also fitness trackers. My own wife, for instance, comes home every day now she has the Nike Plus app on her iPhone, telling me how many, that she's now run 300 miles since since she started, and how she's and she's tracking all of that information. She's been put in control of her own data. It's been made into a product, something that she can use. All of this stuff is a part of that larger transformation we're seeing in how data is being used, not just by marketers, but even by consumers, and it's a part of this broad equation. So that's a lot to cover. But let's start with a company that probably has done more than almost any company that I can think of, and it's one of the reasons we invited them here today, to understand the importance of digital data. 1-800-Flowers understood how data works for them from a very early point in their history. It was a company that essentially grew up in the digital data, in the digital era. It was starting to establish through its infrastructure very early on, building pathways within its infrastructure so that it could data could inform all of its major decisions. The company may work along very predictable lines of seasonality, but in many ways it uses data to maximize and optimize the sales that it can make at any given moment, at any given Mother's Day, at any given birthday or anniversary, and to do so in real time. And that takes a remarkable sophistication when it comes to using data. This is a company that believed in analytics long before analytics was cool. And the company has, for almost all of its 3 decades, been at the cutting edge of adopting new technologies, but at the same time evaluating them critically. And we're honored to have with us today the president of 1-800-Flowers, someone who is going to talk not only just about big data, but also its limitations, and understanding that big data itself is not a magic bullet. It has more to do with how you use it. Chris McCann is the president of 1-800-Flowers. He has helped move this company through a lot of these transformations, a lot of the adoption of all of these new technologies, but has also helped filter out the hype. Please welcome Chris McCann.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. So this is a pretty exciting time that we're in right here as we look at data and how it's transforming our businesses. And as Steve said in the kind of title here, data is not a magic bullet. It is by no means a silver bullet. It's not an easy solution to a difficult problem. It is rather a difficult and complex solution to everything, right? The good news is that the world of big data is evolving, and the technology to capture, to store, to mine, to analyze, to visualize this data is rapidly evolving. We are at the very early stages of what we're calling big data. Yesterday I had the fortunate pleasure of being at an IBM conference and saw this presentation from John Kelly, the head of research, who put it this way. He said that basically what we're seeing coming is like the perfect wave, right? It's a perfect wave. It's the convergence of historical types of data, transactional data, third-party data, standard demographic, psychographic data that we're pulling together that we've been using for a long time, coupled together with huge amounts of data we're getting from mobile and mobility, from social, certainly we're talking about that, from the Internet of Things, coupled with technological capabilities like the cloud. So big data, simply put, big data is not simply the normal growth of data. This is just the beginning. It is, however, an explosion of data. And the more we begin to dig in and extract that data, the more we find or create more data. So it's an ongoing growth of just all of the different possibilities of data that we can be utilizing. It can be utilized, the data can be utilized as a performance accelerator in many, many areas of our businesses. Certainly, it can be used to help identify opportunities to reduce costs. It can be used to enhance productivity, especially when you look at different forms of equipment, right? You look at companies like UPS, for example, how they're utilizing sensors on their vehicles to constantly gather data to make sure that they're utilizing, good methods of preventative maintenance to make sure that they don't have downtime and things like that. And as marketers, we utilize data to grow the top line. And we look at growing the top line in really two different ways. Finding within the data of our customers and the consumer in general, specific areas to either create or to find new markets, or we grow the top line by enhancing and deepening customer relationships. At 1-800-Flowers, we utilize data to drive decisions in both areas, and I'll touch on those a little bit. But one example really is to enhance our customer relationships. We try to analyze data to understand the relationships that exist between the sender, our customer, the sender of our flowers and gifts, our chocolates, our gift baskets, and the recipient. And is that a husband-wife spousal relationship? Is that some other romantic relationship? Is it a relationship between friends, between a brother-sister? Knowing that helps inform us. For example, at Mother's Day, it is helpful for us to understand the different types of relationships that can exist between a son or a daughter and their mother, right? And then we need to visualize that. So visualization of data is critical. And we need to visualize that data, that type of relationship, to help inform us to make better merchandising and marketing decisions. So let's take a look at this video clip here, which, let me just move this forward. This video clip here, which is from Saturday Night Live, ran it the Saturday before Mother's Day, in which Kristen Wiig really helps to visualize a type of relationship that's all too familiar to us.
Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live.
Flowers are nature's most beautiful gift. So this Mother's Day, I'm going to show my mom how much I care with a little help from 1-800-Flowers. Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Oh, honey, I love these. Thank you.
The gift that's as wonderful as she is.
But maybe you should keep them because your apartment is so sad.
Because my mom means everything to me, and I love everything about her.
Excuse me? Yeah. Are there nuts in this?
There are never nuts in Eggs Benedict. You don't have to ask that every time.
Well, I'm sorry for double checking, Kathleen.
You're not even allergic. Nothing would happen.
I'm far from it.
I guess you could say she's my favorite person in the whole entire world.
You know that mattress store downtown? Mattress Factory?
No.
This mattress warehouse?
I don't know.
The owner hanged himself.
Well, she's my role model, my best friend, and everything I hope I'll be one day.
I can't find my debit card. I think my identity's been thieved. I'm sleeping. Why are you up? Representative 245.
So this Mother's Day, I'm turning to 1-800-Flowers to help thank my mom for all the amazing times.
Hey, what's the latest with that Leanne Rimes girl?
I have no idea.
What a saga that is. Jeez.
And above all, how open and honest we are with each other.
Last week, your father and I watched a porno. Why would you share that with me?
So call or click today and make this a Mother's Day she won't ever forget.
Still can't find my debit card.
Mom, I am doing a commercial.
Gonna double check inside this guy. God, I wish I was a lesbian so I didn't have to carry a purse. Where are you going? Honey, it's your commercial. I didn't mean to interrupt. Come back. Come back.
1-800-Flowers. And buckle up, because Father's Day is next.
Kathleen, it was an Asian porno.
Dad!
It was just a great moment. We had no idea that was happening. But clearly we did what we could to make sure, we tweeted about it the next day. We followed the conversation taking place. It was amazing how many comments were like, oh my God, that's exactly me and my mother. So, like I say, a relationship we're all too familiar with, but a very good visualization of that relationship. So, at 1-800-Flowers, we are about delivering smiles. We're not a technology company. We are an e-commerce company that has always embraced new channels, new technologies, where they can enhance customer engagement for us and deepen the relationships with our customers. And that's what big data really is helping us to do on an ongoing basis. As marketers, data provides us with a clearer and more comprehensive understanding of the customer experience. It shows us how our customers are feeling, what they're thinking, and how we can help them find the right gift for the right person to help them express themselves perfectly. Steve mentioned we've been at this for a long time, right? And we started, 37 years ago now with one flower shop, not too far from here, but in some cases a world away, over on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, on 62nd Street and First Avenue, at a time well before big data was even imagined, right? And in this store, we gathered data on our community that we were part of. We gathered data on our customers. At that time, we probably only had about 30 customers. And they would come into our store, we'd get to know them, they would just sometimes pop in just to have a cup of coffee and talk to us. But we were gathering data, so we knew how to service them differently. And I remember 4 distinct types of customers that existed in that neighborhood, in that community. And you could, as I go through them, you could think of them, today we might call them personas, but back then they were real people. There was Phyllis, the typical Upper East Side socialite. I mean, the epitome of class. And probably the second most beautiful woman I've ever seen. At the time, she was certainly the most beautiful, but again, I was a 15-year-old impressionable boy, so many people looked very beautiful to me. But what we need to give her was a very certain high-style design floral arrangement. There was your young, urban, working-class professional, Ellen, who was just one of the most fun, dynamic people I could ever remember. And she had a different style. For her, a nice, simple bouquet of daisies in her kitchen always made the day. There was the celebrity customer, Walt Clyde Frazier, who many of you here in New York may remember. Walt Frazier, who played for the Knicks, who I would love because he'd just pull up, park his Rolls Royce, double park his Rolls Royce, and bounce back and forth to stores and give me the opportunity to sit in his car and watch it so he didn't get a ticket. And then, of course, there was a different type of customer that we had in that store. It was Big Paulie, who ran the Upper East Side bookie operations out of the gas station across the street. Now, Paulie had very different styles and tastes from Phyllis and from Ellen. And we learned how to keep data from Paulie. He always had a notebook on his customers, so we started keeping a notebook on our customers. But today, we're utilizing technology and data to understand how to treat our different customers differently. Today, we're trying to manage that same one-to-one relationship with 30 different customers. And as we've grown our business from that one store, we like to look at it and saying that we've actually grown through different 4 waves of change. Right? So we grew from that one store to 12 stores in the New York metropolitan area. And then around 1984, we really noticed a change based on a new technology, 800 telephone service, and embracing that, we noticed our customer shopping patterns, the customer behavior start to change. So we changed our business model based on that. And we embraced 800 service. Our first telephone number was 1-800-221-0085. But what that made us do as a customer behavior changed because of the technology was we shrunk our retail footprint. And we went from 12 stores to 3 stores. We were doing more money and much more profitably out of those 3 stores than we were out of the 12. And then we watched another new technology come into the market called online services. And we got involved early, and we launched an online store on CompuServe in '91, not knowing what it would amount to, but knowing that technology has the potential to change consumers. So we needed to be involved. And we got involved, and we watched what happened. We watched how things grew. We learned right then that data, big data, was huge for our business. Because when we launched other product lines because we could do that, right? We realized our customers weren't only coming to us for flowers, they were coming to us for other gifts. We launched gift basket and food gift product lines on CompuServe and watched that our customers back as early as 1991, customers who were buying those other products weren't buying less flowers, but they were turning to us to help them with their gifting solutions, to help them with the relationships in their lives. And clearly then, throughout the early 90s, by 1997, the World Wide Web was the winning technology that was adopted by the consumer, and we rode that wave. Today we're in another wave we call the 4th wave of change, we call social commerce, driven by SOLO-MO, social, local, and mobile. And we're watching and getting involved early. I mean, we've been involved in social commerce and mobile commerce for 5, 6 years now, experimenting early on and learning. And it is still very early in all these areas, and I'll touch base on a couple of things we're doing in each of these areas. But these waves of change have been driven by technology, and they've been driven internally by a culture of innovation, which is extremely important. Our culture of innovation is one driven to always be looking to embrace new technologies, because I don't know which comes first. Does consumer behavior change technology, or does technology change consumer behavior? I just know it happens, and it happens together, and it happens more rapidly all the time. And clearly, when, as Steve mentioned a minute ago, data, and we talk about data, we've all been utilizing data for a long time, but as it becomes more and more complex, it also becomes more real time. So the veracity of data is ever increasing. And while that culture served us well as we've grown throughout the years, in order to really be on the forefront of this next perfect wave, a perfect storm, as John Kelly termed it yesterday, we also need to make sure we're building a culture of analytics. Again, we constantly hear the different types of skill sets that are needed in organizations to drive and understand the analytics and utilize the analytics, not just for insights, because insights don't mean anything unless we're utilizing those insights to make big decisions and to drive change. So as we look at our business, right, in the areas of social, as I said, we've been utilizing social technologies for a while. We're leveraging data to efficiently and effectively engage our customers, constantly optimizing content and creative based on the data and the feedback and the analysis that we're getting on what's working, what's not working in all different channels. we're taking in people's social data, their social graph, and bringing it into the shopping experience with 1-800-Flowers.com, with FannieMae.com, the Popcorn Factory, Cheryl's, by bringing in what we call birthday widgets. So that when a consumer is involved in our ecosystem in one form or another, we're constantly utilizing their social graph data from Facebook to remind them of upcoming birthdays. Birthdays is a very important occasion for us. So we're letting them know that while they're placing this gift, in the next 2 weeks, they have these other 4 or 5 birthdays that are coming up. And we have to constantly get smarter at how we're utilizing that data, where we're getting it from. And not just remind them of a birthday, but we need to understand which birthday is of higher importance to them, so that then we can curate the appropriate product offering based not only on that level of relationship, again, and understanding that, but also potentially on the recipient's social graph data that we can pull in of what products and services of ours they might like, or products and services that aren't ours, but we still facilitate that transaction. That's a responsibility we have to our customer. Again, customers are looking for us to utilize data to make everything more relevant for them. The days of concern of privacy have moved on. We expect privacy. We also expect people to utilize our data to better service me. The social gifting. Social gifting is another area really emerging. I mean, the best epitome, I think, right now of social gifting is Facebook gifts. But we're starting to see it pop up many different places. And what that is, it means it's not a considered gift, a considered action. I don't sit there throughout the day and say, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday. Let me go to 1-800-Flowers.com or Cheryl's.com and choose a gift to send to them. But in the middle of my daily social interactions, I might say happy birthday and boom, be offered the opportunity through 2 clicks to send a little cookie card from Cheryl's for $5 delivered. And as we look at it, we all know we have lots of friends. I have a few $50 or $75 friends, but I have a lot of $5 friends. And I'm much more likely to say happy birthday with a $5 cookie than I am with a $50 floral bouquet. Local is extremely important. And in our business, and we have local stores under the 1-800-Flowers brand, the Fannie Mae brand, the Cheryl's brand. And what we find is it rounds out the life cycle for us. It gives us the opportunity to have a different type of interaction with the customer. Sometimes the customer wants that local interaction. In the floral category, sometimes it's for sympathy occasion, right? If someone in your family, a relative happens to pass away, you want to go to the florist and order the floral needs that you have. Right? Or it might be for a party or a wedding. Local presence gives us that, but it also gives us the ability to tie in mobile data, right? And if you look at mobile data, right, the early successes of companies like Foursquare and other location-based services have really been driving a whole new force of marketing. The best marketing vehicle we run right now that drives foot traffic into stores is mobile advertising. So it's quickly surpassed other more traditional forms of advertising for us. And if we look at, mobile itself, mobile is changing everything, right? We're all watching our businesses. We're all watching how consumers are migrating to mobile devices for access channels faster than anything we've ever seen. Right? So we're a firm believer in omni-channel or multi-channel retailing. That's why you see we started out as one store and we still have stores. We then grew through the next wave of telephonic commerce and we still have it. The next big wave where the consumers moved was to e-commerce. But that's quickly moving to m-commerce and mobile transactions and mobile marketing. And we're firm believers that m-commerce is but a small piece of mobility. The ability to stay connected to the always addressable consumer is a marketing opportunity like we've never seen before. Can you imagine the customer, again, we all have our mobile devices. We all have our apps, dashboards. But we all make choices at who gets there. And if, it's the new loyalty card. If I can get on your screen, your first screen, second screen, maybe third screen, that's huge. You're carrying me around, my brand, with you all the time. And then the ability to have communications about many different things, not just the transaction, It's just extremely powerful. So geolocation data, I mentioned already, extremely powerful. We're learning more and more. I think with many companies and different mobile media companies that we're working with, we're just on the forefront of that. You know, it's early in that space, the capabilities that exist. I list up here one of the things we've done, Affirm Payments. So we were an alpha partner with a company called Affirm. That is your classic use of big data to create a new market. So what's one of the biggest obstacles in mobile commerce? The amount of clicks and input that someone needs to do. And the last thing you want to do is ask someone to enter their credit card information on a mobile device. So Affirm uses people's social graph data to really, in real time, analyze whether or not they will extend that person credit. So can you imagine that they're looking at how often you're interacting, how many friends you have, how active you are, and then have algorithms that they run against that whether or not they'll extend you credit. Affirm guarantees me the payment, and then they take the risk on the back end. But that really significantly reduces clicks, thus increasing conversion in my mobile commerce space. People want, as we mentioned, they want and expect us to use data to enhance their experience. So we look to do that. We customize it by the experience by identifying the customer, specifically when they come in, making sure that we're giving them curated product offerings based on their history, based on their transactional data that they have, based on their profile, sometimes based on the profile of their recipient address book, if they've input that, but more and more, being able to pull that data in through people's social graph, whether it be the sender or the recipient's social graph data. Utilizing clickstream data to analyze in real time what they might be looking for. And then making sure that we're giving them that data as appropriate, giving them the product offerings based on the use of that data. Of course, customized marketing, marketing materials, marketing emails. I mentioned, before, birthday is a big occasion for us, and we have a program called Smile Reminders, where we remind people of different occasions that they've asked us to remind them about, and birthday, of course, is the number one. And if you look at the increase of data, the veracity of data that I mentioned before, it took us, probably almost 10 years to accumulate 5 million birthday reminders. And as we've now changed this program and really put it into a social technology, this month alone in May, we will acquire 1 million more birthdays that people are asking us to remind them about. And then it's our responsibility to make sure we're reminding them in a relevant manner with a curated product offering. So that's constantly different ways that we're looking at enhancing and deepening the customer relationship. But we're also looking, as I mentioned, to try and create new markets, to find new markets. I mentioned some of our early data analysis back from CompuServe, but throughout the years, we would constantly look at our customers, analyze their data, and find out why they're using our products and services. And at the end of the day, they're using our products to deliver a smile for many different occasions. It could be birthday, anniversary, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day. Could be just because someone got a new job, just because of this, just because of that. Right? All these different reasons. But what we found early on was that they weren't just using flowers to express themselves all the time. Flowers, if a person has 14 ship-to gift occasions in their year, flowers would satisfy maybe 1 to 3. And when we started to ask and analyze what all the products they were utilizing, it was all these food gift products. So we've expanded over the years. And as I mentioned, we have Fannie Mae and Harry London chocolates, the Popcorn Factory, Cheryl's Cookies and Brownies, which are just unbelievable products. What I love about that product is when you get that product into the customers' and recipients' mouths, they become addicted to that product line. And the retention and frequency metrics we get are phenomenal. So recently, we've used this data and analytics to launch new product lines. So from Fannie Mae extending into Fannie Mae Berries that you see in one of the tabs on the top here. We launched 1-800baskets.com in the middle of the recession because we made sure we constantly are innovating and investing for the future. And then also we launched in the midst of the recession another new brand that, to compete in the marketplace with fruit bouquets. So these are, fruit bouquets. There's a company out there, Edible Arrangements. It's one product. It's a great product. And we're utilizing our florist network to go and grab part of that market. So finding new markets within our customer base. And it's just creating great opportunities for us. And then utilizing this from a understanding which customers are migrating between which brands or who has an affinity more likely. I would love for every customer to be a customer of every one of my brands. That's unlikely. So I have to understand which one they have more of an affinity for and make sure we're doing the appropriate cross-brand selling and cross-brand marketing opportunities, both within transaction and, of course, on the back end and with proactive marketing. So as we look at things here, we look at the always connected consumer. We're looking at the always addressable consumer. We need to create the infrastructure that allows us to capture, to manage, to analyze the data. If you look at all the different data sources, and this is probably not even all of them, it's relevant. These are the ones that are relevant for us and for our customer, which is at the center of all of that data. As we look at our IT systems these days, our IT development, we're using a philosophy of architect for data, so that even in the transaction, into the ability of real-time data, how do I capture data early on, as I mentioned, clickstream data, et cetera? How do I capture that early on even so that I can use that data in real time to influence the transaction we're having, the engagement that we're having today, let alone utilizing that data on the back-end analytics and bringing it to the forefront. So it's not easy. As I mentioned, this is a complex and difficult solution to everything. But we have to do it, right? And we are an analytically driven company, and we use all forms and sources of data to recreate the types of experiences we had in that first flower shop on First Avenue and 62nd Street. And the types of customer relationships that we're talking about was exemplified by this woman, Dee, who worked in one of my franchise stores, still does, in the North End of Boston, and was captured in a television show that we were featured in, Undercover Boss. And I'd like to play a clip of Dee and pay no attention to the guy in with the beard. So if we could play this other video, please. I think we have the other video ready to go. Okay, Steve, we'll hold on that one. But you'll see, I loved this clip because Dee just exemplifies relationship building, being part of a community, and one-to-one interactions. No? Okay, they said they had it. So trust me. maybe you saw the television show previously. But Dee, and she ends the clip, and I love it. And when I said something to her about how she treats the customers in her store and how she treats them, she says, this is my home. I treat these customers as if they're coming into my home. And if we can utilize data to create that at scale, we win. Period. That's what we're trying to do in every single channel. And if you look at it, you can say that data is the world's next natural resource. Some people, or some places and some businesses will have more than others. Some places or businesses are better at mining that resource. And the winners will be those who utilize this resource to create competitive advantage. Simple as that. Thank you very much.
We have time for questions of Chris, if anyone wants to. Oh, here we go. Stand up and tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Peter Smith. I'm working for a company called iPredictus, and we are a data convergence platform. And we're out of New Jersey. But my question to you is that the enormous volume of data that you currently have coming into you from not only your customers, but from your vendors, how are you dealing with that problem, situation, or opportunity?
Well, one of the things that it's a challenge, and also at the same time, obviously, an opportunity. So we're looking at making sure we're re-architecting our systems constantly to say, how can we be collecting that data? One of the things that we've had to do recently, and we're almost to the end of it, is we had to go back and redesign and rebuild our customer marketing database to capture all these different forms of data. And one of the key components as we went out and looked for different vendors to help us with that was who had the best social roadmap, really, in looking at that. And we've decided to work with one company. We're putting a campaign management tool on top of that. From a technology point of view, we're utilizing from the front side of things. We've really become a bit of an IBM shop, so we're using on the web platform, WebSphere Commerce, Unica Campaign Management, Core Metrics, T-Leaf, backing it up. It's an Oracle database. Merkle's helping us build it. But it's, one of the key factors in that was not what their existing capabilities are, but what we saw as their roadmap in the future, and especially the ability to grab all of the different social data that is available today and coming. Yeah, sure. The
second part of that is that with all this convergence going on, how are your senior C-suite staff working together instead of working in silos when all that data is available? So, I mean, there's a...
Yeah, so I think it really turns to how do we look at it differently from an organizational point of view, from a skill set point of view. There's several different things there. As an example, in the conference I was at yesterday was about how is big data changing the role of the CFO. So I attended that conference with my CFO, and how is he looking at that differently? Certainly the CIO has been leading it from a technology point of view, but also throughout the organization, we've been adding additional people. One of the person that's here today with me, Sandeep, strong analytically driven people into the organization. One of the things that I'm not doing now, but am thinking about strongly, especially since yesterday, is really centralizing all of that analytical capability. It is to some degree, but my food brands are kind of run out of the Midwest. Flowers run here in New York, and we have lots of communication. We've adopted new collaborative communication tools like the Google suite of applications, and so it's helping, enhancing, but I need to look at that. And then another key move I did about 3 years ago with the Flowers brand specifically is I changed I made a lot of personnel changes about 3 years ago in the Flowers brand, and one of the key moves I did was I took the CFO of my floral group and also made him the chief marketing officer of Flowers, because I was not happy where we were. We were not as analytically driven as we needed to be at the time, and that's dramatically had a great dramatic impact.
Another one back here.
Hi, Paul Buffa from Kaplan Test Prep. So one of the big challenges with data, obviously, is there's so many different sources, and especially with social, you have a whole nother source with a ton of data, and one problem that we run into often is associating all this data. Do you find that that is the big challenge, or that you can still have takeaways from these different buckets of data?
Yeah, I think it is a challenge, but I also think that as we look at the data, we're quickly moving from the point, because of technological advances, whether it be cloud or just computing power, we're moving to the point of where we no longer will make decisions based on a sampling of data. We will make decisions based on all of the data, right? And that's, again, having the people combined with the technological capabilities to really analyze all of the data. And then we move into the next era, again, something I picked up yesterday, which is just mind-boggling, right? So if you look at the different eras of computing, we've moved from tabulating to programmable computing, and now we're moving into cognitive computing, where the computers will be learning off of that data on their own, and then really thinking. And I think that's also accelerating the thinking of humans along with it. So So it's a challenge now more than anything to both get the people in the skill set to be capturing the data, analyzing this data, but then also moving to the next phase, which is real understanding of sampling of data provides insights, but the understanding that when you can utilize all of the data to drive decisions, most of the time that computer-driven decision is going to be better than a human-driven decision.
Since data privacy governance are increasingly of importance to almost any company who wants to get into data-driven marketing, what has been your experience in dealing with consumers on the issue of what data is being collected and how it is being used? Do you detect sensitivity in your dealings with consumers, or are they just happy that you know as much as you do about them in order to serve them better?
Yeah, I think our detection has really been, we do detect sensitivity to say you should have this data, use it, more so than any concerns of privacy. And I think to some degree it's been driven by a generational element of people just used to that a little bit more, but it's quickly migrating through all generations to say, if I've given you data before, make sure you're utilizing that data to make my next experience more relevant, more pragmatic and easier, right? People turn to us. One of the things that's driven 1-800-Flowers all the time is we constantly make it easy for you to act on your thoughtfulness. Whether different access channels or when you come to that channel, we make it easy. Utilizing capabilities like Affirm Payments to drive that decision, utilizing your history and your profile to make curated product suggestions to help you get through that decision-making funnel quicker. So that's the sensitivity that we see, is people are saying, here is my data. Make it easy for me. And that's great because it makes it sticky. And what we're creating is a celebratory ecosystem of a family of brands. So I need to drive and utilize that data to make that relationship sticky so you become a customer across all of my brands.
Chris McCann, thank you very much
Steve,
for a great start. Thank you. And our first panel sort of segues beautifully off of Chris, as we do, as we did in our first show, as we do with most Media Post shows. We try to start with the brand perspective and understanding. Getting data is the easy part. Knowing what to do with it is the hard part. We keep hearing about the ways in which data should be bringing companies into closer contact with their consumers and adopt a more consumer-centric point of view. We keep hearing about how data will break down silos, and we keep hearing about how data should be working across different departments to show greater interdependencies across departments. But is all of this happening? And how does it happen? Are we seeing new products and new services really being generated out of the analytics yet? To engage this more top-down view and understand how companies really are, in practical ways, starting to make better use of this brand data, we've asked Michael Wolf to take the lead on this. Many of you know Michael. He is the founder and managing partner of Activate, a technology and strategy company. Michael, I think many of you know, used to be the CEO of MTV Networks and also a director at McKinsey, and also was sort of at the cutting edge of one of the last great sea changes in the late 1990s when he wrote a fascinating book that helped define a lot of what was going on in marketing in the 2000s, the entertainment economy, how media forces were transforming our lives. Please welcome Michael Wolf and his panel.
So the title of today's panel is called Big Data and the Brand Marketer. And a lot of the discussion today about big data centers around using big data in a way of looking at users as really advertising targets. And what we're going to try to do in this panel is get to thinking about users more as people in a way that we can understand them as customers, as consumers, and do a better job of understanding them in terms of what products we can sell to them and how do we address them and how do we make the experience, the user experience for them better, either as part of a content environment or as part of marketing. And so we put together an incredibly great panel today. I'd like to introduce them And even though we have 45 minutes, it's going to go very quickly. So I'm going to use the moderator's prerogative to interrupt them as we talk. But first of all, let me go through each of the panels. To my left, I have Jesse Kiernan, who's Chief Strategy Officer for North America for RAP, and she oversees the strategic and development and value proposition of RAP across all of its clients in North America. I've got I'm going to jump up here. I've got Quinn Kilberry, who is Senior Branch Manager at Pepsi Next and Pepsi Innovation, and he's going to talk about what he's doing there. I've got Jocelyn, who is Executive Vice President and Global B2C Marketing for the Financial Times, and her remit includes everything from using data and marketing, managing most of the customer relationship management for the company, as well as subscription. And I've got Michael Steckel, who is in charge of all of the ad operations for JP Morgan. And then finally, Nada Steerett, who is Chief Revenue Officer for Axiom. So I'm going to start each one of our panelists off with a quick question and then move on. Quinn, I'd like to start with you. I'd like to understand, how are you merging online and offline data? No injuries here.
Man down.
How are you merging the two to be able to know more about customers and address those customers most efficiently?
That's a good question. We obviously don't sell virtually anything, in fact, nothing online. So online to us is a way to reach our consumers, our shoppers, our customers, because we sell everything offline. Yep. So what our main goal in this field is to efficiently locate the right people in order to talk to them and make sure they're seeing whatever our marketing idea is. Like for us, especially myself, I don't necessarily view data as driving the marketing. I view it as a strong enabler, right? Like I've got an idea that I want to sell, and data helps me find the right people who are going to buy my idea, who are going to share my idea, and the idea and the data need to be friends. So what we've been able to do in the last few months, which has been exciting, that's the innovation portion of my job, is to kind of marry up our go-to-market strategy. So basically, we have trucks that go to 50,000 stores-ish in the US. And so we're just aligning those truck routes and where people live around those truck routes to online activity. And there's a lot of different filters and ways to get there, but that's essentially what we're doing. So we find the right people by, are they currently buying our product, and do they live in the right place to buy our product?
And how do you know if you can address them, if whether or not there's somebody you can address who's a cola drinker or not? Tell us, how do you use the data to get there?
That's evolving quickly. The easiest way is our long-term sort of at the register partners like Nielsen and IRI, who when you scan something at a register, then we know you bought it, right? And then if you could link that back to a shopper card, we know you bought it. And if you have an email address, we can find you online somewhere. It's all that creepy stuff. But, that creepy stuff works.
So that ties, for example, into a Kroger's card or something?
Absolutely. That's one way to do it is Kroger's card, right? So through the partnership with dunnhumby, we work with them. We are data agnostic. It doesn't matter who the vendor is. If you've got data, we try to find the right partner that can put all of that data through one filter to both geo-target you and lifestyle target you and ensure you want to see the message. Like honestly, half of what I'm doing is making sure the people who don't want to see the message don't see it. Because not everybody wants to buy a Pepsi. And some are rather vocal about it. So we don't necessarily want them to see our message. We want the people who love Pepsi to see it. So it's both finding the right person and finding the wrong person and making sure that each see the right thing.
And how does that relate to what you do at a store level? You have trucks that go out everywhere around the country.
Yes.
How does this relate to what you're doing in terms of in the store?
Right, good. It is, and we're not quite there yet, but I'm hoping within the year we'll be there, is every other week, anybody who shops at a store know that either Coke or Pepsi is on sale that week. We just kind of take turns. That's how it works.
That's how it works, okay.
That's how it works, right? I mean, like, there's way more complicated than that, but in the end, that's how it works. So we've done that to ourselves. That's the system. most people don't buy our product when it's not on sale. So we should be pulsing our messages in the appropriate times. Like if we know at a Kroger store in Detroit that our 12-packs are on sale, then our message should be about go to Kroger and go get this 12-pack that's on sale. And then the next week, if we're at Meijer, then you should go to Meijer to buy that 12-pack on sale. If you buy from both those stores already. Or if it's not a week that we're on sale, here's a coupon, and go buy us instead of our competitor. So like getting down to that household level, that block level, will allow us to do that. That's a work in progress, but that's the goal.
Certainly shows a lot of promise. When people talk about big data, one of the criticisms that they have is that we've got lots of data. In fact, everybody talks about big data in their company as, well, whatever that problem is, big data is going to solve that. There's another problem, well, we're going to get the guys in big data to solve it. But one of the criticisms is, how much of it do we really know about people? How much of it are we addressing people as human beings versus as an anonymous visitor? Tell us about what you're doing today in order to be able to help marketers really understand more about their consumers.
And that's a great question, and I think the term big data has become so incredibly popular right now, and I would worry less. Although I like how you coined little data when we were at the IAB conference, and what's really interesting that's going on in the industry right now is, for starters, think about the way marketing decisions have been made. Marketing decisions have been made on crappy data at best, and what I mean by that is online gave this false sense of security that everything was going to be about, now I can do really great targeting. It's targeting on a third-party anonymous, a cookie, which, as you all know, gets gender wrong half the time. $70 billion on television has been transacted on a household panel, 25,000 members of a panel. So we've kind of thought that, aggregating bad data and crappy data, but because I've aggregated it and call it multivariate, suddenly I'm brilliant. And instead, and why I'm so passionate and why I came to Axiom about a year and a half ago is that the ability to take first-party customer data, and we collect first-party customer data from more than half of the Fortune 500s, where it's customer data, it's fully privacy and security compliant, but it's an actual person data. And we patented this new technology that allows a third-party cookie to be able to use that data before they make an ad allocation decision. And a perfect example is, retail's a big category for us. And somebody like a Macy's, who was named Direct Marketer of the Year this past year, can literally take all of the data, aggregate it, apply the right insights, the right hygiene, the right targeting, and get a true customer view. So whether you go into a store, whether you shop online, whether you're going to an ad place, whether you are part of a loyalty program, I know for a fact that it's Quinn, and I know here's what Quinn likes, here's the experience that Quinn wants to have, and it's not in a creepy way because it's been, first of all, Quinn has given permission, which is incredibly important. And more importantly, though, he's getting what he wants and when he wants. And so that's what I would urge everyone to think about from a data standpoint is, what do you want the data to tell you? I think that's what you were saying as well. What do you want to do with the data? And then make sure that you are really rifle targeted in how you use it.
Michael, when people talk also about big data, they talk about massive amounts of data, and basically you torture it until it tells you its secrets. And in your case, you're dealing with obviously a lot of consumer data at JP Morgan. How do you use that in order to make the best advertising decisions and the best decisions about how to reach the people that are your customers today and the people that you want to enroll as your customers?
Yeah, I think that last part about reaching the people, it is so much more than advertising now. I mean, there's kind of two sets of silos that need to break down, and I've only been on the advertiser side for about 18 months. Most of the time before that was on the media front, and there's similar challenges on the data. There's silos based on departments, divisions, or specialty fields, email versus targeting online, and the big challenge, especially living through a couple mergers of offline and online companies, was getting all that data together so everybody was on a kind of a consistent plane, but not only a consistent plane, but you had the deepest data that you could combine, more than just customer information, but information about those customers on what they're doing on your websites with some of their transactional information. And again, my experiences on the media company side, I don't want to be too down on that because it may have just been the evolution of big data. I think at the time we were there that there were great data departments, but they were specialties, and the plumbing and with the help of companies like Axiom, being able to meld that all together wasn't really available. And when I talk about breaking silos on the other side, it's really platform specific. Now if you've got this nice consistent look of the data, that when you talk about a prospect for a Freedom credit card and you're looking at your database for direct mail, that it's consistent with the data that you're using for your online ad targeting, that's the big first step. You've got that consistent view and no gaps in the information you have. And it was really satisfying though that not realizing I should have remembered from days in financial years and years ago that banks are very good at data. And when I came in 18 months ago, it was very satisfying. When I heard about all these great targeting and things that we were going to do, I was like, great, 18 months from now, we'll probably be ready to do it, because that was based on my media experience. And really, those silos of the data were already down and we were ready to execute. And that was very satisfying. So now we're 18 months in, and now our challenge is that other side, is let's break the silos down between the platforms. If we see that this is a good prospect, left-handed bowlers are great prospects for checking accounts, we shouldn't just be using that in our what you call it, paid media. We should be applying that to the messaging we're doing on site, whether that's own media ads, whether it's custom content. There's so many touch points with the consumers. And you also want to be consistent in what your capabilities are in the mobile space and digital video. You could even talk about call centers. Wouldn't it be great that the same information that I'm using for targeting comes up when someone at the call center gets a question from a user? I think, in the last 1-800-Flowers talk, they were saying, one of the big inhibitors is asking people to give you information over and over again. And I think that's the key for a lot of this stuff taking off. I'm really happy, with where we are, but we've got so much more work to do. Like I said, for that, not only the consistent data availability, but following that consumer with all the touch points you have with them. That your email message might follow up the fact that they clicked on a banner on your site or clicked on a banner in outbound media. That the content that you put in front of that consumer is personalized properly based on actions that they took in those other areas. And I think media advertiser agency side, I think we all have somewhat potential to do that. But my advice to everyone is get your get your data organized first, and then everything else can kind of sprout from there with all the expertise and the marketing geniuses that you probably all have in your companies.
Can I just say something about the silos piece of it? Because everybody, certain industries like the financial services industries, the silos are a legal requirement. Same thing in the health industry in some cases. But it's for a lot of you who have old systems that were built and then new companies added new companies and it's a silo. It's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you have the ability to extract information and then hygiene or cleanse it to an individual level. You can still use it for really viable marketing communication. A lot of people say like, oh, we have an old system and it's going to take us 10 years to get this the way that we want to, and that's absolutely not the case. There are so many other alternatives.
Jocelyn, your areas of responsibility include, it's massive in terms of understanding all of your users. Everybody that is either a reader today comes to you because you've given them a limited number of articles that they can read for free, or those people that are buying content, or your subscribers. Could you talk to us a little bit about what are you doing and how are you not only using this to get people to subscribe, but also getting to them to use your product more?
Yes, so I actually can't envisage a time now where we're not completely dependent on behavioral data. It's really at the heart of everything we do. So not only the marketing strategy, but also the implementation of all our campaigns. And just to touch on what you mentioned, Why that's so important is if we go back 8 years to when the FT first piloted its access model. So how that works is essentially you register, and with that data, we collect that, and it enables you to look at about 8 articles every 30 days. And that information that we collect at registration is really important demographic data. And how we use that is in multiple ways. But first, product development, and that's led to things like partnerships with Flipboard. Secondly, through deepening relationships with customers through things like recommended reads, because we understand, we append that to the behavioral data, the demographic data, so we can look at the content they're looking and get them more deeply embedded into the site. Thirdly, very important for us, on the advertising revenue side, we can create very sophisticated targeting propositions for advertisers to reach our global audience of senior decision makers. So an example of something like that we're very pleased about is a product we've recently developed called FT Smart Match. And we're actually, what we're enabling, what we can do is we can basically match contextual content from our advertiser with FT content. And we do that via kind of semantic algorithms. So it's pretty neat. And we then use those semantic algorithms also for our recommended reads. And then the fourth one is obviously...
So it's like Amazon.
Yeah,
okay.
That's exactly. And then the fourth one is really around acquiring new customers. Through the registration process that we have over 5 million registered users. So we're building propensity models, we're looking at multivariate testing on our landing pages, we're doing some, I think, quite neat things around landing pages, bilingual language pages, testing different types of currency, testing how we bring in kind of social and mobile traffic with different types of optimization. And all of that data that we collect at that first point of the customer becoming a registered user enables us to do that.
Thank you. Jesse, when we spoke last week, you talked about some of the ways in which you're using measurement and data analytics for really to make advertising more efficient for a number of your clients. To the extent possible, could you tell us about some of the things that you're doing with your clients and how that's working?
Yeah, and I think I'd like to respond to that in terms of both efficiency and effectiveness. As an organization that is paid to create incremental value for our customers, for our clients, our responsibility is to drive sales or leads or other outcomes that wouldn't have occurred otherwise without that spend. And that makes the use of data, and particularly the use of data in context of measurement and attribution, really, really important. As everyone's kind of mentioned here, big data is not actually new. We've been using credit cards and making phone calls and shopping at big box retail and all those things for a really long time. The thing that's new is the types of data that we have access to, and also I think the evolution of technology that allows us, or that creates the promise of the value of the application of that data. And if we can get to a place where sort of data plus technology equals human intelligence at the speed of computers that drives incremental value for both consumers and brands, that's kind of what motivates us as an organization. There are 3 ways in which we attempt to apply data for that purpose. The first is just in measurement and attribution, and in evolving the algorithms themselves, from, as we've been talking about in the industry for a long time, away from first click, last click, and towards more sophisticated algorithms.
Could you give us some examples, please?
Sure, of attribution?
Of some of the things that you're doing overall in each of these areas.
So I think, if I may, the 3 areas are analytics, or attribution and measurement first. Second is sort of proactive opportunity identification or decision-making intelligence. And then the third is in actually creating sort of data-rich experiences like recommended reads and those types of things. So in context of each of those, I think in attribution, what's most interesting is the opportunity to look at KPI-based attribution. So not just which channels are actually producing the most sales in a counting kind of a way, but actually which ones are translating into specifically the customers with the lowest churn potential, or into the customers with the highest lifetime value potential. And for particular clients in the technology industry, as well as in automotive, we have defined ways in which, in fact, we're creating a product called Dynamo that does this in combination with Analect. But that actually translates and recalculates all of the media outcomes against those different KPIs. So you can see the relationship between those channels if you're just looking at overall sales production versus if you're looking at the contribution to high value customers, the contribution to low churn potential customers, et cetera. In context of creating data-rich experiences, we're doing some really interesting stuff with some Clorox brands that I can't talk about because it's going to launch soon, but is all in the space of facilitating the customer creation of their own data. We have proven as a society that we're interested in creating our own data and making use of our own data, and that we are not that scared of that data being used if there is that embedded value in context of that experience. And so to be able to create things that allow people to make progress by accomplishing certain tasks that lead to benefits and perks and rewards and discounts and things are things that we're doing in the CPG industry, in particular Clorox, some Nestle brands, also with Kraft, and enabling those consumers to see how they are making progress on things they actually care about, like becoming healthier, or being more hydrated, or doing better things for their family. And that the data that they create there not only allows them to continue to make that progress, but also allows us to learn a lot more about those customers.
So when you look across everything, every one of you is doing something that has to relate to addressing customers and marketing products. How does data figure into the product development process and deciding what are you going to offer users, what are you going to do to address them as consumers and help them as you create new opportunities, whether it's a credit card or it's a new drink? Or would love to hear that.
Well, I'll start off. One of the things that we're very lucky about is that through the way you access that content, we have one effective login. So that gives us a 360-degree view of customers across all their devices. So whether they're reading that content on a smartphone, on a tablet, via a desktop. And that's given us, a huge amount of richness of data in terms of the engagement, how much content people are looking at. And that actually led us to the recent work we've done with Flipboard. So the FT is the most recent business partner of Flipboard.
Yes.
That launched earlier this week. And that was from a pattern of data that we'd seen of more and more people wanting to kind of aggregate FT content and read it alongside other commentary, and also coming from tablets, where we see a much higher engagement of products. That's one example I can mention.
And there are interesting companies, a company called Bizarre Voice in Austin, Texas, where they aggregate social conversations and reviews on products, and then what they do is determine whether and it's all algorithmically based, but do you guys work with them?
No, I just have good friends there. So.
They're a cool company because what they then do is with the data that they collect is they determine, this belongs in the group that goes and tells the product marketing group or the product development group, here are some things that people are finding fault with the product. This says something about, I love the ad campaign, I hate the ad campaign, and then this says something about the retail experience. And so then they and I'm kind of screwing it up a little bit, but they ultimately then can guide any one of their marketing partners with the data that they're collecting based on consumer usage. And I think it's a really neat company.
Yeah, I think an example, so I work on Pepsi Next, which is a new brand. It's probably the only brand in our company that was actually born of data-driven insights, which is kind of why I like it. It's a cool brand, right? I guess it just turned 1. We had our first birthday. It was very exciting. Cakes, all that good stuff.
But how did the data insights come about?
So yeah, it was essentially If you look at, we'll use this room for an example. If there's 100 of you out there, approximately 60 to 65% of you are active in the cola category. And then
See, I didn't even think, I drink a lot of soda, so I'm now active in the category.
You're active.
Okay.
You're active, okay? That's my nerd speak.
Yes.
And then 18% of you would be classified as people who are drinking less regular cola because of mostly because of health concerns. You're getting older, or you're not in the shape you were, or your wife's telling you need to stop drinking so much. Whatever it might be, 18% of you are doing that. So 11% of the population fits in this category of I'm drinking less regular cola, and I will not drink diet because it tastes nasty, it makes me seem not manly, I just don't like it. So essentially 11% of the country, fits this Pepsi Next profile, which is 60% less sugar with real cola taste. And so it's a brand that's basically built to take away category barriers, and we're starting with sugar and reinforcing good taste. So we tried it 10 years ago or ish, and so did Coke with another product, Edge and C2, and it just didn't taste good, so it doesn't work. But it tastes pretty good now, and every year we're going to innovate on that based on the data we see. So one of the things we saw in digging into the data is that aspartame was a real issue to a certain population within that. So this year we took it out. 9 months later, aspartame came out. So that's every year we're going to continue to do that to kind of remove barriers, and it's never going to be a huge business probably, but it's going to be a good place to innovate. And that's all based on data.
As an agency, we aren't typically responsible for product, but one of the things that we found particularly interesting from a data use standpoint is the relationship between search data and sales and share data, and juxtaposing those things. Search data has long been known as sort of a leading indicator of demand. So if you can understand where you have low sales, but search that's gaining, there's an opportunity to maximize product potential, or where you're seeing both sort of sales and search waning, maybe it's time to sunset a product or diagnose how you can evolve and modify that product. And for products in the space of, we do a lot of work in the toy category where things are short-lived,
yes.
Or even in the CPG, in food and beverage in particular category, where innovation is super important. That information, just the simple juxtaposition of those two data points can be really valuable.
Yeah, we have a similar thing. Our digital marketing group at JP Morgan Chase, we don't own any of the products or the product development. I think we do add value now that we're able to take some of the activities of our customers online and get that into the overall consumer profile, which should feed into product development and some insights that are probably difficult to get elsewhere. But on the other side, I think we kind of own the product of content building right now, because it's not something, building web pages and building websites that's more consumer driven from an educational point of view, as opposed to a utility like a banking application, is one of the things we're bringing in. And what's interesting about big data is if you look at the past, getting down to the micro segments in a general advertising world really didn't work. It mostly didn't work because there wasn't enough inventory. If I knew that left-handed bowlers that live in Belmar, New Jersey were great prospects for my Sapphire card, it really didn't matter because there weren't enough of them for me to go and sell that, or in this case now buy that from a publisher, or probably even from one of the exchanges. But what's interesting now is when you're in a world where you don't have to reach this minimum spend level, you can micro-target and micro-personalize your web pages based on the consumer. So, it's not exactly our product development, but I think there's just some ways that these micro segments that pop should be fairly easy now with the content management systems and the data organization to start to establish in your consumer-facing content.
When I was thinking about this panel and I asked people in marketing in general what they thought, what was on their mind, what was concerning them, the issue that came up over and over again was location. Okay, we have all this data, we know what people are doing online, we have a sense of what they're doing in a store because we have that kind of data. What about information because we know where they are? What are your organizations? How are you thinking about this today?
Sure, I'll start. So I think that there are a handful of different applications for local data. The most important thing is its ability to provision utility. Having things at the time and the place that you want them is sort of that holy grail of marketing. So being able to connect into APIs like Foursquare or even game layer type APIs like Scavenger and those kinds of things to integrate into marketing experiences allows for the translation of that into specifically relevant, really timely, behavioral activators, whether that is simple coupons or that is direction to, next desired behavior of some other sort.
Actually, it's our 125th anniversary this year for the FT. We've been going 125 years, so we're still guiding the way for global businesses. And in celebration of that, earlier this month, we lit up the Empire State Building, 125 years, and we made a special offer, subscription offer to subscribers, which was the ability to subscribe for $125 for a year, which is quite a discount on our full price. And we used Twitter and Foursquare very effectively, promoted tweets to actually geo-target those offers to people who we thought would subscribe, people who are registered users, people who are searching for content. And so we were able to do in a very kind of local penetration area in the US, so we wanted to make that offer specific to the US.
I think it is interesting, the location information. I mean, there's geo-targeting based on where someone lives has been around forever and has worked really well. But, we're not doing this yet. But the idea of starting to marry someone's profile to where they are, because where someone is, especially if it's someplace that they return to or it's someplace that they travel to, you probably want to message them very differently. I'm going to quote about Paulie, the bookie on the Upper East Side. You might be wanting to put brass knuckle ads in front of him when he's local to home or where he's doing business. But if he's down in Miami, now he might be with the family, he might be on vacation, probably very different, different type of messaging that you want to do. So, there is kind of the world of current location versus home location versus work location also, and the different mind frames that folks are in. And, it's almost another layer that you can start to put on your profile data.
And I'm only going to add that it's there's a difference between like a regional or local targeting and targeting down to the individual. And the interesting statistic is that the two most popular regions in America are Schenectady, New York, and Beverly Hills 90210, because the majority of people put 12345 as their zip code or 90210 as their zip code. And so therefore, having true customer data to append to what what the stated zip code is gives you a little bit a much greater, I should say, opportunity to target against the person in the region where they actually are.
Yeah, and I can what I said in the very beginning about geo-targeting and aligning that with our customers, that's the end goal, is that you're giving the right message at the right time. I mean, that's just where we want to be. You don't want to interrupt somebody with a message that's not relevant. You want to say, here's a message for you, here's a coupon, you're standing right here, right now, you're thirsty, here's $1. Like, that's what you want, and so I don't think we're that far away from there, but yeah.
So we talked earlier about the fact that people are generating a lot of information about themselves. What is it that they're expecting in return? I mean, we're talking about how we use that information, but what is it that consumers are expecting in return for their data, and how much visibility do we want consumers to have in the fact that we have data about them? Nada?
Well, I think it's really important, and I think that, as my boss Scott Howe likes to say, permissions are the new patents. And unless we are being so methodical on getting consumer permission, notice and choice, or to use their data, let them know how you're using the data, and give them an opportunity to either opt out or if there are some glaring errors, to be able to edit on their own. Now, there's tons of complexity, technical and legal, in how to accomplish this, but it's something that we at Axiom take very, very seriously and have a whole team who's been working on this. But I think that's at the core of what we do, because if you start to A, appear to be creepy, or B, appear to be too aggressive, or C, giving a customer just the absolute wrong messaging, you don't really get an opportunity to earn that back. And so I think the next 12 months, maybe even 6 to 12 months, it's going to be a lot more about the consumer control or customer choices. Extremely important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And we're definitely not, our scale makes it hard for us to get there yet, but we want to. And of course, you're here next week apparently to tell us how to do it, so that's good. But I think basically the way I simplify it is there's like 3 people out there, 3 types of people who will see my message. One is people who want to see it. 2 is people who don't want to see it, and that's just a wasted spend. And the 3rd is people who don't want to see it, and that's a negative spend. Like if they see it, like we get reactions that are bad. So we only want to get that first one, and that's in the end where we want to get to.
Sorry. I would just layer as a dimension to the permissions, to come back to the idea that I think consumers, what they're looking for, to your question, is utility, and is making their lives easier and better and more streamlined, and that data provides that potential. We all want, Starbucks to start making our order when we're within, 500 feet of the Starbucks. We want our barbecue at home to fire up when there's an event on the calendar, or the pool to heat, right? We want these things to happen. I wear this up band every day because I want to know what my sleep patterns look like, and how many steps I took, and whether that's healthy or not.
I've stopped wearing mine. It was too sad.
Yeah. But I think that if we can get consumers to create data in exchange for the value of using it, we are willing to do that as consumers for the privilege of living in a data-rich sort of world where things get easier for us and things get more streamlined, and maybe we have fewer apps that we need to log into, and fewer things that we need to think about manually.
Well, as a publisher, we want them to deepen their relationship with us. We want them to read more content, and we want to highlight things that they might be interested in. So not just online, but because we can marry that data all together, we can talk to our newspaper readers and say, look, this is articles, these are coming up. They're coming up in the paper, or bring them in online and transition them. And each time you're building up a bigger picture of what they like, where they're interested in, and that can then help editorial in terms of the types of articles they're writing about. It can certainly help deepen their relationship with us, and as they read more and more content, they're going to kind of come deeper into our subscription funnel, and eventually they're going to start paying for it. And we see a very important correlation, which is of those people who register and subscribe, 86% of people do it on the same day. So we have to be very effective at pushing people deeper into that funnel and serving them that content. And that's something they've come to the site for, so they genuinely are looking for relevant content and to have a navigation around the site.
Yeah, I think the summary from what everyone is saying, it's kind of that combination of ease, relevance, minus creepy. And that isn't personalization just for personalization's sake, because we have big data.
We're quickly running out of time, but we asked each of you to come here because you're really in the vanguard. You are ahead of what the rest of the world is doing in terms of big data. If I could just ask each of you just briefly a minute or so to say, what should we walk away with today from what you're doing? What should we know that will help guide everybody in this room and elsewhere in terms of their thinking? Michael?
I think from the position that myself and our digital marketing group is we're just trying to use data to empower the people who are better marketers than us. They're a little bit smarter about those things, I think the whole challenge and concept of big data should just be really seen as an opportunity and a means of empowerment to have folks with very different uses between content, between social, between direct mail, between offline channels that, whether you're a media company or an advertiser or an agency working for your clients, use this as an empowerment opportunity.
And I would say the biggest thing that we're excited about is creating the very first cross-channel data operating system. So not cross-channel meaning display versus email, but rather first-party customer individual information, offline behavior, and applying that to the online space across all channels. And that's not been done before, and we've just patented a cool piece of code, and we're launching it this fall. Very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. I think there's two things that I can think of. One is just sort of something that I would love to be able to figure out for our own Pepsi business, and that is how can you also, so it's great to find the right person, but how can you find the right level of times to message with that person? Because I mean, my personal example is my wife works for Starwood, so we spend a lot of we're always on Starwood, right? But half my ads are now Starwood. Like that's it. I turn on the internet, I see Starwood. I see Sheraton, I see W. Like, so that's just an example, but like there's
I worked at a health company, and you should have saw, they must have thought I was the sickest person on the planet with the ads that followed me.
Right, exactly. So like that's to me, an unmet need that would be great, so that would help somebody out there. And the second one, from a sort of a brand point of view, I think it would be really helpful. Like half my role is innovation, so I need to go seek out these the new ideas out there. So that's what I do. It's not just the product, it's the marketing side. But most brand people, and I know in my last brand roles, this is foreign, and the complex verbiage doesn't help. So I think if you can figure out a way to simplify your message, like the brands need this kind of work, but they don't understand it. So they just kind of flip it away. And so data people go deal with it, but they don't have an active role in it. So I think people who can figure out a way to crack that, you're going to have a much easier time selling in this much needed technology.
Great.
I guess my parting thought would be that data offers us the opportunity to not just be more relevant to consumers, but to actually offer them something of greater value and to be useful to them as brands. And I think that's the key, the ticket to emotional loyalty, and the kind that gets you out of cycles of being on sale one week and your competitor being on sale the next. And if we can harness data in that way, then we will both grow business and improve all of our lives.
Justin, we're going to leave the last word to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I have 2 points I'd like to make. One is about the people. So in your marketing teams or in your organizations, it's so critical to have people who understand data and how to apply that.
You have a rather large team, right?
Well, we work very closely with the data team, and I think that's been reported. We now have 30 people who are working across the organization. Given we're a reasonably small organization, that's quite a high percentage. But we also have within our marketing team, we have multivariate testing and optimization specialists. So they're looking real time at what's happening. They're doing optimization of landing pages. We'll be building propensity models. And we're actually even looking at there are products now that enable you to look at how people are behaving on your sign-up pages, what is causing them to exit, what is causing them to behave in a certain way. There's so much richness of data that if you're not using it at the moment, you're just missing out on such a significant, massive revenue opportunity. So that's what I would say, is to encourage everyone to empower their marketing teams and to work more closely with their data analytics and behavioral analytics teams.
Thank you very much. This is an exciting conversation, one that could have continued throughout the entire day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We do have time for questions of the panel.
We saw this flashing light.
There we go.
Great.
You can't see them, but you can hear them.
Hi, James Lee. I work for investment firm COSA. Specific question I have is for Pepsi. Can you talk about any of the offline attribution that you've done? Are you working on that specifically to see how online marketing impacting offline sales? And can you just share some of the best practices that you have with third-party partners, data partners, or even media platforms? That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. So I've personally done a lot of that. I think our company is starting to get more involved in that place. So basically you're saying, once you see the message, do you go in store and buy it? So yeah. So we are in the midst of a rather robust test right now with several different data partners. I can speak to one because it's public and it's been happening for a couple of years, and with a partnership with dunnhumby and Kroger. So actually 2 years ago, actually a year and a half ago, I guess, with the launch of Pepsi Next, actually. I guess I would just say that when you find the right consumer online, you are more likely to get them to buy. So simply put, it works. I can't give a lot of details behind it, but the reason we're doing more and more of it is because if you have the right targeting, and then you can find those people online, they will buy more offline. And I feel confident in saying that, and we have case studies to back it up. And I guess I can't go into a whole lot more detail because I'm not allowed to. But
I can add one more thing to that, because there are, I'll just speak my experiences with Axiom is on average, so in our info-based product, we have about 1,600 data points on 700 million people around the world. And so all you need is a couple of different things. Could it be a shopper card? Could it be any kind of a loyalty program? And then you can start to determine what that person had been doing and what had driven that. And so from an attribution standpoint, that's where it gets very exciting.
Michael, panel, thank you very much. One of the, I think there was a lot of discussion in this panel already about the ways in which data helps a brand become more consumer-centric. And it's one of the interesting ironies of big data, of course, is that it seems like a cold and mechanical thing, analytics. But in many ways, the aggregation of massive amounts of data is supposed to bring a company closer to the nuances of how people live, and in essence, allow a company to put a more human face on their own interactions with the consumer. No one understands this better than our next speaker, David Boyle, who is the Senior Vice President of Consumer Insights at HarperCollins. I invited David because I've seen him speak before. He has been talking about big data before we were calling it big data. He has just signed on at HarperCollins, but before that, spent a number of years at EMI doing marketing and promotion for two of the coolest brands on the planet, the Beatles and Pink Floyd, and also one of the up-and-coming brands in the second screen world, Z-Box. David has been focusing on the uses of data to gain deeper and deeper insights into consumer behavior, but also especially how to better understand and put a human face on the company in relation to the consumer. Please welcome David Boyle.
Hello. I'm David, and I'm a data nerd. Or at least I used to be, until I realized that there was other ways to use data that would have bigger and better impact than that. So I started off doing work around mergers and acquisitions and helping philanthropists to invest in the most effective charities, nonprofits, helping progressive candidates to win elections. Had a lot of fun as a data nerd. And then, I realized that if you help people to better understand things and help people to use data rather than just doing cool data projects, then actually you have this much bigger impact. So that's what I'm doing right now. Particularly I'm talking about building a deeper understanding of data. I think in most businesses, this is a real opportunity to go beyond these analytical projects and really help people across the organization, not just in marketing or in sales, but help the organization as a whole to build this deeper understanding of consumers. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean a kind of deep intuitive understanding where things come to you quite quickly, you don't have to search for them. Insights come without much reflection, or maybe without much reasoning, or having to wrestle with things in your head. This kind of deep understanding. I'll tell you about. I'll give you some examples of what I think that means and what it doesn't mean. And for me, this is a really exciting kind of holy grail going beyond data. I'm going to steal from Kate Bush, the singer-songwriter, and some of her lyrics for this presentation to guide us through the theme. Who's familiar with the song by Kate Bush, Deeper Understanding? Yeah, almost nobody, actually. Right. This is one of the things I love about working in creative industries like music or in books, as I am now. Is for us, marketing is about helping people to find these great works that are going to touch you deeply or inspire you. So drop 99 cents in the break on Deeper Understanding by Kate Bush, and I promise it will touch you deeply, or your money back from me. So the song starts out this way. It's about somebody who's obsessed by a computer and starting themselves off from the world. So I turn to my computer and spend my evenings with it like a friend. This is how many businesses treat data these days. And let me give you an example of that in action. Who can tell me what these two beautiful codes mean? What do they represent? Yeah, right. They're hex codes. They describe colors. And the first one, 2A5DB0, is this beautiful shade of blue, well, as is 2200CC. And some time ago, Google had realized that on Gmail, one of these colors was used for hyperlinks, and on the main site, one of the other colors was used for hyperlinks. And being a data-driven business, they wanted to kind of understand this and optimize this. So they did a whole raft of A/B testing, I think with 40 different shades of blue. Different people got different shades of blue, and they measured click-through rates and decided which was the optimum color of blue to use. In my life as a data nerd, this excited me greatly. What a cool project, right? And why don't we do this always and forever? But I'm going to use it today in a different context, because problems like this and initiatives and analysis like this offer some challenges if what you're trying to do is to build this deeper understanding in an organization. So for example, this doesn't really meet any of the criteria of what we're talking about by a deeper understanding. Does the result kind of the experiment come to mind quickly? Well, probably not, because it's a hex code. Does it without much reflection or without much reasoning and inference? No, not really. Does it actually help us to really understand consumers and why that color, was the optimal color? Well, no, not really. And actually, the problem doesn't really apply outside of the tight confines of the Gmail interface. Given all the other user elements and color schemes that they were using, that might be the optimum color of blue. But when you take a different site or a different part of the Google experience, then that blue in that context might not be the right color. So a really fascinating and brilliant example of a great use of data, but one that's actually not helping us to build this deeper understanding. So I want to elaborate on that a little bit more. Let's turn back to Kate Bush for some inspiration. Later on, she talks about, well, I've never felt such pleasure. Nothing else seemed to matter. I neglected my bodily needs. I did not eat. I did not sleep. The intensity increasing till my family found me and intervened. Beautiful song. So I'm going to focus in particular on this part. I neglected my bodily needs. I was obsessed by this data on my computer. And, I missed the bigger picture here. I'm going to resist making a poop joke at this point, talking about bodily needs. But by bodily needs for the organization at large, whether you're Google or HarperCollins in book publishing, there's a whole raft of needs you have for data to understand your consumers and the role of your products in consumers' lives. And I'll show you how I think this misses some of that and will help us to neglect some of those. Problems starting from things like who's actually aware of our product in the first place and who's not, because they might be the biggest opportunities. Who's tried it, who actually liked it, who and how did they engage with it, who's advocating on behalf of the product. These are all data questions that are fundamental to the business and that need to be understood for the business as a whole to make progress. And then that data needs to be cut in all sorts of interesting and useful ways. So in each of those elements, like which types of consumer are doing those things and not doing those things. Because what's optimal for one type of consumer may not be for, or probably won't be for the others. How are they doing it? Why? And in which respect? Where are they doing these things? There's this whole raft of different questions, these needs that the business has to deeply understand consumers. This is exactly what we're doing at HarperCollins, for example, for each of our books and for each of our authors, is to start by laying this out, understanding across all of these different needs, where are the opportunities, where do we need to focus, and with what types of consumer. The 2A5DB0 example, I think, fits in about here on the diagram. It's definitely a subset of engagement. It's a pretty small subset of the overall engagement problem as well. So it doesn't build deeper understanding. But also, it doesn't help us to address some of the larger issues and questions and needs that we have as a business overall. Now, if it's totally incremental analytical resource that's doing this problem, then absolutely go for it, wonderful. But all too often in businesses, what you see is that the core analytical resource who should be addressing these bigger and wider issues of the business to help them to understand their overall opportunities is frequently being distracted by what seems like a critical or interesting analytical problem, which actually is just a footnote. So focusing on the bigger picture rather than kind of cool and interesting analytical uses, I think is one of the really important lessons. And finally, later in the song, Kate talks about being lonely and lost without her little black box, her computer, or in this case, the data. I think this is the other reason why that story for me is such a powerful one or is so useful, because it's a clear case of where, without the analytical engine, decision-making would then grind to a halt. Once you've done a project like that, you suddenly start to say, well, look, I can't really decide on any colors without A/B testing 40 times, and what you're doing is taking decision-making away from people and constantly leaning on analytics in order to drive those decisions. Let me give you an example of where that's not the case, and where you instead of totally empower people to make decisions, but actually still really ground it in data. These are photos I took when I had the pleasure of visiting a warehouse in an industrial estate outside of Heathrow Airport last year. It holds the archives for EMI music, so master tapes and studio tapes and recordings back to almost the origins of recorded sound itself. For example, all the original master tapes from the Beatles recordings, all the outtakes are stored there, all these rich and beautiful assets. Miles of corridors, just in the same way as the Indiana Jones movie, with crates lining up. You wonder what treasures are inside. There was a treasure in here that gave me a wonderful insight into this topic. I heard about it because I bumped into a guy from EMI in New York, actually, on the street. He was from LA, I was from London. We bumped into each other in New York. And he had this big smile on his face, and he said to me, "David, you're going to be really proud of me, because I used your consumer insight the other day in a meeting." And I thought, yes. So I say, "Okay, brilliant." I'm like, "What? Tell me about it. I'd love to hear." And he says, "Well, I was in this meeting with, and I won't name the artist, but the family of an artist that everybody in this room will totally love and respect. I guarantee that. So a big artist. The artist is dead. The family are looking after the estate, and they're so excited because they've had the archivist going through the master tapes from the recordings from late 60s, 70s, and they found these unreleased songs that no one's ever heard before, that were unknown to have existed on these master tapes, and they're excited. They're in this meeting, which is about the best of album they're putting together for him, and they say, "This is cool. Because we can put these tracks on the best of album and drive some extra sales from it. This is really exciting." But then my friend at EMI scratches his head and pulls a frowny face and says to me, "You know what, actually, maybe you're not going to be that excited about my use of your consumer insight." He says, "Because I didn't draw any graphs, I didn't take any data with me to the meeting. He's feeling bad about this." So I say, "Well, don't be an idiot. You don't need data to make a great evidence-based decision." So I say, "What did you do?" And he said, "Well, I said to them, I just kind of knew, because the best of album, we were targeting at casual consumers, which is a simple phrase that should make sense to everybody, casual consumers, but also is the name of one of our consumer segments at EMI, so totally grounded in 1 million consumer interviews around the world. We've analyzed them and profiled them extensively." So he says, "Oh, no, the best of is targeted at these casual consumers. So it's great that you found these, but casual consumers aren't excited about cool new stuff. They just want low prices and products in places where they shop. Sales channel and price, don't worry about exciting them. That's not the point. We'll keep those bonus tracks and we'll use them on another project we've got coming up later in the year, which is more about the more engaged consumers." And he was upset because he hadn't taken a graph to the meeting. But what he'd totally done is built this intuitive understanding based on all the evidence of who these different consumers were. And he'd made a decision, a wonderful decision, on the basis of that. This, of course, made me smile. I think is the perfect example of building this deeper understanding in people and empowering them based on data, but to make these smart decisions on the fly and without having to lean on a spreadsheet or a graph in order to make those decisions. So this, of course, did meet all of the criteria for what I'm calling building a deeper understanding. And later on in the song, so Kate obviously recognizes that she needs a deeper understanding as well and cries out for it. And I think, I want to tell you, I think what that means in my world. It means, we're talking about data, this is data-driven marketing. It means starting with data. I'll use the HarperCollins example here. We've only been going for a couple of months so far. We've gathered already tens of thousands of really detailed, complex consumer interviews from around the world. It's an amazingly rich data set on people's interest and engagement with books and authors and reading nowadays. It's about taking that data, but boiling it down, distilling that data into things and conclusions that people can carry around with them in their heads day to day. So we have some consumer segments in the same way that many of your businesses do, and many other businesses do, but totally evidence-based consumer segments with clear so whats that they can carry around in their heads and remember and action day to day. Really clear handbooks on how to reach those consumers, what you should do in order to engage that consumer with your book, what you shouldn't do to engage that type of consumer with your book. Ideas and conclusions from data, but that are designed to be carried around in your head day to day. For an example, like the one I gave you a minute ago. So about data, but empowering people. And I think that recognizes that the kind of the simple model of the role of data in a business just isn't what's appropriate or applicable. I think it might never have been. You might say, well, data, you crunch data until it gives you insight, and then insight tells you what to do, gives you your decisions. But that's clearly not what I'm talking about today. And at HarperCollins and previously at EMI, we recognize that it's people in the business, day to day, in situations like the one I described, that are making decisions all the time. People with hearts and minds. And our job is to help them to have the data that they need in their heads to make those decisions and not to have to lean on the data too heavily. I, by the way, think that this is always how decisions get made, even in more analytical situations. In mergers and acquisitions, you would never do an acquisition without first doing a whole raft of analysis on the company. Of course, that was the part that I really enjoyed. But you'd also never buy the company unless you believed in it and you understood the staff and you felt passion for them and for what it was they were doing. There's hearts and minds there that make the decision at the end of the day. And of course, you need the data to help you, but it's people that make decisions. So recognizing that and putting data into that role in a business is for us absolutely key. So this is the role that we see data playing. This is how we think about it in the business. You have tons and tons of insight, rich and powerful, alongside the skills and expertise of people in the business. And we recognize, firstly, that the insight, and this is how the insight comes to be so cool, frankly, is that it wouldn't exist and wouldn't be so cool if it wasn't for all of the great people in the business who spent years and years working with books and authors, for example, at HarperCollins. They know their stuff. Boy, do they know their stuff. Not all on every other book and not in every situation, but each person is incredibly smart. So teasing out the issues and ideas and hypotheses and understanding that those people have built up over the years, testing that with data and supporting it or maybe challenging it with data, asking the right questions to tease out and identify those issues, and to scale those ideas and hypotheses across all sorts of other books and other markets and other consumers, that's the role of insight. And then insight goes back to people again, of course, and it challenges or supports them or guides them or nurtures them or makes them quicker than they would have otherwise been or makes them bolder or more powerful than they would otherwise have been. But its job is to help those people. So alongside them, recognizing that it comes from them, but also goes back and challenges and inspires them as well. So this is the kind of role and how we think about insight alongside people. And I guess, ultimately, what is it that we're trying to do in our insight teams? How do we see insight's role in the business? And what do I think the role is? I designed the insight team at HarperCollins and previously at EMI to do this, to help kind of most people with most questions that they have on most topics that they're working on, most situations that they're in. sounds kind of timid in some ways, but pretty bold and adventurous mainly. What it means is that you say no to an awful lot of things. There's a